all you heroes out there, and welcome back to Hell Yeah Gaming. I'm your professional protagonist, and let's dive on into Let's Make a Fighting Game! The first in a planned series where we're building our own video games from the ground up! In the previous video, we determined our basic concepts and the themes. And that means we can move on to the greater details of the actual punch fighting. Before we get onto that though, we have to call out Battle Geek Plus for punching that subscribe button. If you want to be subscriber of the day, follow their example and smash that subscribe button, and of course leave a comment on any of my videos or community posts for a chance at your own shout out. Quick recap if you're new or you just need a refresher. Last time we determined that the basic concept of this game will be a time travel tournament with combatants taken from throughout all history for a colorful roster of characters, leaving no ideas off the table. We also established that the main themes we'd be exploring through our plot and characters are legacies, ambition, and the concept of time itself. Now, as I've been ironing out more of the story and the characters, which we'll get into in some other videos down the line, my initial ideas have evolved somewhat, so I would like to add one more theme to our list, and that is the theme of identity. There we go! And now with that out of the way, we can move forward to discussing our major mechanics. Fighting games is one of those genres that looks simple and shallow on the surface, but in actuality is incredibly detailed and complex. It's easy to look at different games and think that the only thing that's really changing are visual, graphical styles and the actual individual movesets of the characters, but this couldn't be further from the truth. From subtle and mundane aspects like hitboxes, input lag, and move cancels, to more overt details like arena styles, 2D versus 3D, game speed, and even super meters. No two fighting games play exactly the same. Hell, Capcom released no less than 5 different versions of Street Fighter 2, and every single one of them feels and plays differently from one another. Before we can get bogged down into the nitty-gritty details, however, we have to determine what type of fighting game this is, mechanically speaking. We have to figure out what subgenre we're working with. Much like the Holy Triforce, praise be to the Golden Goddesses! There are 3 widely recognized styles or subgenres that all fighting games can broadly fit within. The first and oldest is the 2D fighter, most famously popularized by Street Fighter. 2D fighters are the most simple. There's you, your opponent, on a flat plane where you can move left and right, up and down. They tend to be the simplest to figure out, and they're the easiest to button mash your way to victory. Which is why we're going to go ahead and put 2D fighters in the power slot of our Triforce of fighting games. As gaming technology advanced, so too did the humble fighter. Enter 3D fighters, first put on the map by Sega's Virtua Fighter, but really exploded in popularity with the advent of Tekken. At first, they seem indistinguishable from 2D fighters. You have yourself, your opponent in a ring, you can move forward, back, up and down, but now also side to side. With the addition of a Z-axis, this full 3D range of movement increases the complexities of what you're able to pull off nigh infinitely. With so much more to understand and master in a match, we have no choice but to slot 3D fighters in the wisdom section of our fighting game Triforce. And lastly, that brings us to our third subgenre, which is also the most broad. The platform or arena fighter. The most famous of which is far and away Super Smash Bros. By far the least traditional of the lot, platform fighters are the only subgenre to allow more than 2 fighters in the ring at the same time. They have less restrictive stages, full freedom of movement, the most custom rules, often they have random item spawns or drops, and in general just have a far different structure than traditional 2D or 3D fighting games. For these reasons, they are often considered party games as well, and for some very incorrect people, they don't consider them part of the fighting game genre at all. We'll be slotting platform arena fighters very firmly in the courage section of our fighting game Triforce, since the chaotic nature of them means that you really have to just dive in and hope for the best. I mean, unless you're one of those Fox-only Final Destination, no items people, but then where's the point in that? You're taking out all the wacky fun. And that's our Triforce of fighting game subgenres. I mean, sure, there's others that don't quite fit into it so neatly. They do blend styles or even defy them outright in some cases. But this is just a general guide, and we're not looking to completely revolutionize the genre here. I am trying to keep things simple for the time being. Trust me, I will be complicating things later on. So for now, which style do we go for? 2D? 3D? The platform arena fighter? Well, I can tell you right out of the gate that we are taking the party fighter right out of it. This is my first foray into designing my own video game from the ground up after all, and like I said, I do want to try to keep things simple for right now, which means that I would prefer not to go for something that's so crazy and out of the box right out of the get-go. Not to mention having to design all of the unique items, stages that have different layouts allowing for entirely different strategic purposes, unique mechanics within everything. It just gets a little bit much for that particular style. So between 2D and 3D, which is it? I'll be honest, my own personal bias does point me toward the 2D fighter. When you have a third axis of movement, that means that part of your control scheme has to be devoted towards allowing for that extra range of movement. Whether that means one button is dedicated to jumping, or it's used for side pivots, or hold it down to change from scooching side to side to becoming a wraparound, anything of that nature. If we stick with a 2D fighter, then that means that the whole button layout is freed up for more unique mechanics, while movement can be handled entirely by just the one analog stick. And that is the reason why I'm deciding that Quantum Combat will be a 2D fighting game. Transition! Now that we've decided on our subgenre, we can look into game modes. Put simply, game modes are the different ways that we can play the game. The most common game mode that you'll find in fighting game genre is arcade mode. A long-time staple since the genre's days in yeon past as quarter-munching cabinets at the video arcade. They are real simple. You pick your character, then you fight battle after battle in a series against opponents until you reach the final boss, upon which their defeat nets you an ending screen, usually unique and tailored toward the specific character that you won as. Since ye olden arcade times, fighting games have evolved with the home console, and with it, a number of extra game modes have come. Versus mode, for playing with friends on the couch. Training or tutorial mode, for just playing around with your character to figure out how they work. Story mode, wherein you play through the actual plot events of the game, which sometimes is the same thing as arcade mode and sometimes is an entirely separate monster altogether. Mission mode, where you have to achieve a certain goal like dealing a certain amount of damage in a single combo string or finishing the opponent with a very specific super move. And so much more. That's not even touching the gimmick game modes that some publishers like to shoehorn into their fighting games, like the Motor Combat Racing or Killer Instinct's XCOM-style Tactical Battle Mode. And then you have to worry about what modes are going to be available online versus local only, how you're going to cater to the casual audience versus the hardcore fighting game community. And can you see how the idea that the fighting game genre is simple is nothing but a ruse? Where do we even begin? Well, in my opinion, the answer lies in accessibility. Fighting games have some of the most dedicated hardcore players of any gaming franchise. Seriously, they get nuts!
Come on, let's get nuts.
That said, the numbers don't lie. there are way more casual fans than there are hardcore players. Most of them really only dip their toes into the online matches rather than spending 80 plus hours a week mastering every combo. And there's only so many ways that you can play through a standard arcade ladder before it gets stale. Meanwhile, the hardcore players are gonna stick around no matter what, as long as the mechanics are there to be fun and challenging to master. Therefore, I want to focus on casual single-player content for the most part in order to achieve maximum replayability for the most amount of people. I think it's fair to start with training mode. I mean, at this point, it seems like an absolute no-brainer. Not having a training mode is insane, to the point that the fact that I'm even mentioning it really feels like a waste of time in this day and age. The same goes for versus mode. Playing against your friends on the couch is an absolute slam dunk. Moving on. Now, I briefly mentioned before that some games have an arcade mode and a story mode. Sometimes they're combined into the same thing, sometimes they're separated. In the interest of creating as much non-competitive content as possible, as well as opening up the greatest amount of story opportunities, which if you'll recall from the previous video, is where my heart really lies, I'll opt for both an arcade mode and a story mode. In arcade mode, you'll go through a ladder of opponents until you reach the final boss, then receive a unique non-canon ending specific for that character, which will serve as a what-if alternate universe in the event that that character wins and helps expand a bit on their personality and what they would do with their new access to the timeline. In this way, you can go through the game once with each character to receive a unique ending for all of them. Now that said, story mode will be a different beast entirely. In story mode, the player won't just go through a standard ladder of opponents to get to one ending, but instead will have a fully formed narrative play out around them. Rather than picking one single character to play as, they'll be swapping perspective amongst the characters, trading off as the story forms and individuals drop out, being able to play as every character at least once, up until they reach the final boss and defeat him with the main protagonist. This mode will be a lot heavier on character interaction, really letting personalities shine through, developing those rivalries and relationships. If you need an example of how this sort of story mode would play out, then look no further than the Injustice series by NetherRealm Studios, or heck, even the Subspace Emissary from Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Ideally, under an unlimited budget, I'd love for it to be portrayed through fully realized cutscenes. However, I am more realistic than that and would certainly settle for a more visual novel style telling of events with still images, dialogue, text boxes, and the most important lines maybe being voice acted. But what about something a little more unique? A personal identity that you don't see somewhere else. Well, my friends, I've thought of that. Remember how I said that I wanted to keep things simple for the time being because I would start complicating things down the line? Well, last stop, Complication Station. Time to get off the train. Woo woo! I've always felt that the beat-em-up genre, while not identical to the fighting game genre, has always been closely related. Like two cousins who always play together so their interests bleed into one another, while still being their own separate individuals. Both were popularized in the arcade scene, both have had a turbulent history since then, and of course both involve people with big muscles punching the tar out of each other's faces. I mean, you'll see characters between the two genres crossing over all the time. They're practically separated at birth. So yes, you can see where this is going. I'm not just designing a fighting game, but also a beat-em-up! And what's more, I'm linking it into all the main gameplay modes. Haha! I told you this is gonna get complicated. So here's what I'm thinking. In both story mode and arcade mode, players will have the option to toggle on or off the beat-em-up stages. That way, the hardcore fighting game community can just jump straight into what they love, what they're here for. While the more casual players who want to have more varied gameplay can have both. If you have the option toggled on, then first you'll go through a relatively short beat-em-up stage with a more streamlined version of your character's moveset translated to the beat-em-up style. Once you reach the end of the stage, then you'll transition into the fighting game portion, where you'll take on your opponent in that style. Any health that you lose in the beat-em-up stage is counted against you for that boss fight in the fighting game mode. But likewise, any power-ups or super meter that you collect along the way will come with you to that fight as well. It's a very risk versus reward extra content kind of deal. And you know what? We can switch the settings so that it removes the fighting game portion as well, making the whole thing beat 'em up. You'll just fight the boss of each stage in that same beat 'em up style. So for those of you keeping track at home, that makes 3 play options for both arcade mode and story mode. Fight only, stage only, or combined. But wait, there's more! I'm about to take your 6-option game mode and add in even more value. How am I going to do that, you ask? Why, it's quite simple. Have you ever seen a beat-em-up that didn't have a co-op mode? Yes! Co-op! The very foundation of classic beat-em-ups! It wouldn't really be an option for story mode since I can't really think of a way to make that work per se. But arcade mode? That stuff was made for co-op shenanigans! I would want to make it available for both local and online play. But how exactly would it work? I mean, it's easy to see how it would work in the beat-em-up sections, but what about the fighting game portions? Well, the answer to that is actually extremely simple. Just have both players on screen at the same time. Boom! Done. But Jeff, if it's 2 against 1, isn't that unfair for the computer? Well, yes it is, but that's part of the fun. This isn't some highly regulated tournament with closely guarded rules that they have to abide by or they'll be disqualified from achieving prize money or some prestigious title. It's quantum combat, baby! There are no rules! It's a dog-eat-dog madhouse of crazy shenanigans where you do anything you can to get to the end and win your chance at affecting the timeline however you choose. But Jeff, didn't you say that only one person could win in the end? Well, yeah, I did, didn't I? Well, you know how it goes with alliances of convenience. Once it's no longer convenient, you better prepare for a can of whoop-ass to come your way! Haha, that's right. Every co-op mode will inevitably go the way of the Double Dragon. Yes, after defeating the final boss together in co-op mode, the 2 players will then have to square off against one another to determine the ultimate victor, with whoever comes out on top ultimately having their ending played for the arcade mode. Well, then, of course, we'll have online play. Standard matches if you just want to spin the roulette and hope that you don't get paired up against someone who spent 100 hours a week mastering every combo frame by frame. And ranked matches to move up or more likely down the leaderboards. From there, I would ideally like to include more modes like a mission mode, survival mode, or trial mode, and heck, even a customization mode where players can go in and alter their skins, costumes, icons, that sort of thing. That said, I do have to be somewhat realistic, and if this project were to ever get picked up, the chances of it being by some AAA developer known for throwing wheelbarrows upon wheelbarrows of cash on their fighting games to make sure that every aspect is fully customizable, like NetherRealm Studios, is very unlikely. So for the sake of this video, I won't be including them, but you can imagine they're there for fun if you like. That brings our final list of game modes to 7! Story mode, arcade mode single player, arcade mode co-op, versus mode, online ranked, online standard, and training mode. If we include the stage fighting and combined options for arcade and story mode, then that just shoots straight up to 13. Whew! Boy, did I end up overcomplicating this thing or what? Well, with that out of the way, I think it's time that we moved on to something a little bit easier and a little bit quicker to cover. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, and yes, battle mechanics are something that can get incredibly detailed. But don't worry, I'm not getting into the nitty-gritty of things like how long does the hitbox on this punch linger for, or things like that. That sort of minutia really has to be worked out in the trial and error balance of gameplay design when we're actually constructing and programming it. So this is certainly not the place for me to get into details like that. Neither am I going to go over full movesets. For one, I still have many videos planned coming up covering the actual individual characters where that would be more applicable. But also, I really only have more conceptual ideas of how they would fight, and I don't have every single move and combo mapped out. That is, again, the sort of minutia that really does go more into the actual programming construction part of the game design. So, just for today, we're only going to go through the universal gameplay mechanics accessible to everybody. The mechanics that are common among fighting games in general, and the things that are unique to give Quantum Combat its own identity. Let's start by looking at a modern, contemporary game controller. Any really, take your pick. It doesn't really matter all that much since their designs, as far as input layout, have pretty much all become the same over the years. Left and right analog sticks, a D-pad, 4 open face buttons, 2 shoulder buttons, 2 triggers. At this point, the evolution of game controllers is much like the evolution of the crab. At some point, we all become crab. Obviously, the left analog stick will cover movement, left, right, jump, duck, that sort of thing. It's also universal across most fighting games that holding backward is your block, and I really have no reason to change what works in this situation. Likewise, the D-pad is just an alternative form of movement because some players simply prefer using the D-pad, and that's fine. But also because the fast, frantic gameplay of fighting games doesn't really lend itself towards assigning the D-pad specific different mechanics like, say, RPG. You know, you can go into Dark Souls and Elden Ring changing out which items you have hotkeyed there for quick throwing, but that doesn't exactly work when you have your normal movement and you're trying to do everything together with the button. Your fingers are gonna get tight. It don't work. So, keeping with tradition, they're both 2 forms of the same movement. So what about the right analog stick? Well, put a pin in that for now. We're going to come back to that later after we've really explored everything else. So we move on to our open face buttons. Whether there's some combination of A, B, X, Y, or various geometric shapes, they do the majority of heavy lifting in 90% of video games. Now, fighting games have classically had 6 buttons for your combos. A light, medium, and heavy punch, and a light, medium, and heavy kick. I know that was my elbow, but I can't exactly kick up onto the camera right here. Many games have moved past the traditional 6-button layout by dropping the medium attacks in favor of a 4-button layout. Light and heavy punch, light and heavy kick. A recent example of that being King of Fighters 15, which launched a couple months ago. So we can go with the modern streamlined version, or we can go with the classic 6-button version. But that would mean having to take up 2 of our trigger and shoulder buttons in order to carry out that full 6-string combo. Honestly, I'm fine with the more streamlined version. It cuts down on some unnecessary complications, but it also frees up 2 more buttons for additional unique mechanics. So, there we go! The face buttons are now light punch, heavy punch, light kick, and heavy kick. Which leads us into our last 4 buttons. Our shoulders and our triggers. Right off the bat, I know that I want one of them to be a dodge roll. And that's really more for my own personal preference than anything else. Guarding is fine and has its place, but it's going to keep you on the defensive unless you can find or create an opening to counterattack. Me, I'm such an Unga Bunga heavy assault player that I'll take any opportunity I can to just keep wailing on my enemy. Honestly, if there's a dodge option and a guard option in any game of any kind, I will 99% of the time be dodging and never touch that guard. So let's throw that onto the left trigger. Next, we have an original mechanic that I call the Quantum Shift. Like many fighting games, you'll be building up super meter, which can be used to expend out for some devastating super moves. At the moment, I'm thinking that it'll cap out at 3 bars of super meter, but that's really one of those details that can be altered as we go. Well, in addition to super moves, you can also burn your super meter for quantum shifts, which have 3 different effects depending on how much meter that you burn for it. At level 1, a shift is a general stat boost across the board, increasing your attack, defense, and speed for a few short seconds. Level 2 will warp your character forward in time so that they appear on another part of the screen, skipping ahead to a new location based on the direction that you are pointing your analog stick and also to the degree of which you are holding it. So for example, if you are holding your stick forward as far as it'll go, your character will skip forward across the screen. Whereas if you just hold it back a little bit, it'd be more akin to a quick blank hop. Lastly, level 3 Quantum Shift will displace your character backwards in time by a few seconds. Putting them back where they were at a previous point while also healing any damage that they took in the intervening time. Think of it a lot like Tracer's special ability from Overwatch. It puts them back where they were a moment ago in the same physical condition that they were in at that time without affecting the rest of the world around them. This will help get you out of long combo strings, recover some health if you just got hit by a devastating attack, or it could also help you dodge a super move coming your way. Though if you would still be in the blast zone, then it probably would be better just to use that level 2 shift to skip out of the way. Speaking of which, if you have more than 1 meter of super built up, then you can choose which shift that you use by holding down the quantum shift trigger and pressing one of the designated face buttons. Or you can just tap the quantum shift trigger to automatically expend for the highest level available to you. Your choice. With the universal new mechanics out of the way, I think it's time that we tackled the mechanics that are a little more unique and personalized character to character. Each and every single member of the roster will have their own special ability tied to a single button. I'll admit I'm taking great inspiration from games like Injustice and BlazBlue for this. And yes, I understand that it's pronounced BlazBlue, but come on, look at that name! Just give me this, okay? Let me have this. One character might be a stance fighter, and pressing their unique mechanic button will cycle their stance to a different style, allowing for several different types of combos and fighting styles under the same character, while another character might just have a single devastating special attack tied to it. In Injustice, these are called traits. In BlazBlue, they are called drives. For quantum combat, we will call them states, as in your quantum state, which leaves just one button left, the right trigger. Ladies and gentlemen, heroes out there, I thought long and hard about this. I considered many options and possibilities, but ultimately, I came down to deciding that the right trigger needed to be an easy super move button. When pressed, you will automatically unleash the highest level super move that you have built up, without having to enter the complicated input command. The trade-off is that it will be a little less potent than if you did enter in that complicated input command. Maybe it's a little less damaging, or it has a bit of lag before it comes out, some speed differentials, case-by-case basis. But that way, hardcore players can still be rewarded for mastering all of these unique inputs and mechanics, while casual players can approach it with much more accessibility. And on the topic of easy inputs, Remember how I said that we would circle back around to the right analog stick? Well, that boomerang just came back! In most games, the right analog stick controls the camera. But in fighting games, that's almost never really a concern, since it's either going to automatically follow and adjust for the fighters as they go, or it's just a fixed screen to begin with. Most fighting games will have the right stick do nothing, while some, like Super Smash Bros., will have it be a shortcut input for things like the smash attacks. Since we already have an easy super button, let's go ahead and make that right stick an easy special button. Same situation as the easy super. You just flick it in whichever direction to decide which special move you want to just throw, easy pull off out there. The trade-off being, it will be a little less potent in some way. Boom! And that's everything that I can think of from a mechanics standpoint anyway. From gameplay modes, to the control scheme layout, to the unique individual mechanics, the nuts and bolts, we covered it all! If you have any questions or have anything that you think was important I left out, then be sure to ask in the comments below, and I'd be more than happy to elaborate for you. Next time, we'll begin covering the single most important aspect of any fighting game: the roster! I hope to see you then. And until next time, my friends, be sure to keep living your life with a great, big, hell yeah!
Everything you need right here. Everything you need right here. Courtesy of Galatech.
Beg pardon my ignorance. If it's not too forward to ask, what manner of creature are you?
I am a mechanically advanced customer assistance worker, property of Galatech, your one-stop shop for everything you need.
Ah, a street vendor you are. Excellent. Then, might I ask, where are your wares?
Upon completion of purchase, all goods are fabricated on-site in accordance with exact Galatech schematic specifications.
Fabricated on You mean to tell me that whatever product is purchased is constructed right here?
Correct.
Such an endeavor would span hours to even weeks for a master craftsman, even with an array of apprentices.
Inefficient product delivery would lead to unacceptable customer satisfaction. All mechanically advanced consumer assistance workers utilize Galatech patented matter replication printers to fabricate requested products in under 2.38 seconds, making Galatech top-rated in customer satisfaction.
Blimey! I would venture to say that such a claim is unbelievable, though I do seem to have found myself in some rather unbelievable circumstances.
Hurry your ass up, Renfair. You're holding up the line.
Oh, yes, my sincerest apologies, sorry. Well now, it does seem to me that I have lost my pistol and my sword in the capsizing of my ship, and I dare say I feel rather underdressed without them. Might you be able to rectify the issue?
Galatech offers many state-of-the-art designs in pistol and blade technology. I shall provide you our full inventory.
That shan't be necessary. Pardon the interruption, but simply provide me with the top-of-the-line models of which you can. I may be out of a ship, but this captain has enough foresight to keep a little spending coin on hand at all times.
Your total is 6,734 drop knots.
Beg pardon?
Your total is 6,734 drop knots.
And how much is that in shillings?
Unrecognized currency. Please provide your income card to transfer 6,734 drop knots.
Regretfully, I have not but coin with which to bargain.
Understood. Would you would like to open a line of credit for this purchase.
Credit, you say? As in a loan? I do believe such an arrangement could be feasible, yes.
To begin transaction, please place a finger into my beak.
That stings! What manner of treachery is this?
DNA extracted for client record. Please state first and last name.
Bloody hurts, I tell you.
Client name registered. Hurts. Bloody.
No. The name is Captain Richard Scott, though at the moment I am not in the possession of a ship or a crew of which to captain. An issue which shall be rectified post-haste, I assure you.
Identity already confirmed. Hurts. Bloody. Now fabricating first product.
Now see here, I have been most polite, but I have no qualms with...
Please inspect product and confirm satisfaction.
Truly a remarkable work of sorcery, though a shame it is that it has such a clash with my aesthetic.
Customer dissatisfaction beyond acceptable parameters. Customer scan complete. Extrapolating aesthetics. Modifying design. Place product back in receptacle for revisions. Please inspect product and confirm satisfaction.
I dare say this is the most gorgeous sidearm I've ever laid my eyes upon.
Please refrain from discharging weapons until you are a safe distance from Galatech property.
Yes, my fault entirely, my apologies. Now about that sword.
Please inspect product and confirm satisfaction.
This blade is magnificent. I feel as though in my hands it could slice through anything.
Galatech patented monomolecular edging ensures.
How can you still not be done? Hurry up, damn it!
Nearly finished, I assure you. Apologies for the wait. Now then, there is something else in which I am in need. Noble street merchant, might you be able to inform a lost man of his whereabouts? I know of no city in the world as grand as this one.
Information is not an approved product by Galatech Department of Sales.
But you claim to provide everything that I need, yes?
Correct.
At present, what I need is information.
Unable to comply. Perhaps I can interest you in a Galatech neuro implant.
That's it. I'm coming over there.
Oh dear, not the most desirable outcome, but the only option I have left. We'll complete our negotiations in private.
Reporting theft of Galatech property. Law enforcement en route.
By all means, I shall enjoy the challenge. I am, after all, a pirate.